Good morning or evening for some of you. Before we start, we will review some logistics just for your information. You can see and hear us, but we cannot see you or hear you. Please submit your questions in the question box on the right-hand side of your screen at the end of the presentation. We will have a lot of information to review, so we feel it will be more effective if you keep your questions until the end, and we'll be available to answer any question you may have. The event is being recorded and will be posted within 48 hours on our website channel. So you're welcome to visit our International Student Orientation webpage, where you will find the hyperlink to our YouTube channel, where you can find the recording of this presentation. Next slide, please. So thank you for joining us today, for making the time to join us. My name is Leticia Samarripa. We probably saw some of you during our last session. I am Director of Global Engagement in charge of the Intercultural Programs Office. Today we have a very important session, and we'll be discussing how to rent an apartment off campus. Doing so is a basic need, we know that, of any new international student if you are not living on campus. As you may know by now, living on campus is difficult. There is a lot of demand, and it fills very quickly to capacity, and that is the main reason of why we are offering this session, to give you some alternatives. Renting an apartment, we know, requires planning and knowing the different aspects that you need to consider in your search. Also, processes and legal aspects may be different from your own home country. So this is why we thought about providing you with a guide. Of course, you will decide how to use this guide, providing you with a guide that will make things a little bit easier for you. We really hope so. This event will be presented by our program coordinators, Carl Tyler and Sauna Hashim. So I will invite Carl to start the presentation. Thank you very much again for joining us today. Your microphone, Carl.
I apologize. I'm doing too many things at once. Hello, everyone. My name is Carl. I am one of the program coordinators here with ICP, and we're the department who will be hosting your International Student Orientation, as well as all of the virtual information sessions prior to that, and that includes today's session. This is a very important topic, and also a very popular virtual information session. As Leticia mentioned, we have a unique challenge here at UTD, where we have more demand for our on-campus housing than we do supply. So those fill up rather quickly, but fortunately, there are lots of options for off-campus housing that, in many cases, is almost like living on campus because it's very close to us here on campus. During the presentation today, we'll be discussing some links or sections of our website, and there's no need to bother writing them down in the moment, as we're going to provide them. We're going to provide a comprehensive list, so you can copy and paste and click on them during the Q&A at the end of the formal presentation. And then for those of you who are watching this later on YouTube, as Leticia mentioned, we'll be putting it within 48 business hours onto YouTube. We'll make sure to include the same links in the description of the YouTube video. All right, so this is our agenda today. These are the items we're going to discuss. Our presentation today is designed to be sequential for the most part. So we're going to try and follow the recommended steps to securing an off-campus apartment in that particular order. So that means first we're going to talk about temp housing options. It's likely when you arrive, you're going to need a place to stay. Obviously, you're going to need a place to stay immediately, whether it be a hotel or an extended stay while you're finalizing your housing search and securing your housing. But even before you get here, there are some steps you can take while you're still in your home countries, and this would be the initial research process. There would be some things that you want to consider, and kind of where you want to start looking. So we'll cover that. Then we'll talk about the costs with renting an apartment in the U.S. and in the Dallas Metroplex, Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex specifically. And then after that, we'll go into the details of the different documents that you're going to need to secure that housing, and what the lease signing process, or the lease is just the term we call for a contract to rent something, and what that process is like, basically. And then finally, we'll open the floor, as mentioned, for any questions you might have. One thing I want to mention before we go to the next slide is that we do have a housing disclaimer on our website. So there is we want you to keep that in mind. While we're presenting general information about some of the housing locations, we're not sponsored by, or we're not advertising for any one particular type of housing or apartment complex or company. We just want to give you a variety of housing options that can be helpful for your decision. So please keep that in mind, especially for the Q&A. We're going to give you general information, but we don't want to give you any specific recommendations. Right. Next slide, please. So one of the common themes that I mentioned that we'll reiterate throughout our presentation today is that many of these processes you need to take care of in person while you're here. And as far as touring the apartment and securing it, signing that lease, those documents, it's something that you really can't have completed while you're in your home country. However, there are steps you can take while, as soon as this is over, there are steps you can take as soon as this virtual information session is over. We want you to understand the best way to kind of go about finding this housing in the right order. So first, we want to talk about temporary housing. You're going to need somewhere to stay, as mentioned, while you're finalizing your apartment search, and completing that in-person part of your hunt. And one option is a local hotel that's nearby. And there are plenty of choose from. We have them linked on our resource guide and website. Again, links are going to be in the Q&A. Another option that would be beneficial for you is if you need a little bit more time to search for housing, or maybe you found a place but you need to wait a few weeks for it to be ready. That other option would be something like an extended stay hotel. And this gives you kind of a cost-effective option. It's more budget conscious. And on our website, we offer some links to some popular hotels and extended stays that are local. So examples might be Staybridge Suites or Candlewood Suites. And we'll mention the website throughout the presentation today for those resources. And again, the links are going to be provided at the end of this session. But in general, staying at hotels or extended stays don't require the process of certain documents or deposits, and they don't lock you into a traditional contract or lease. Obviously, you know that from hotels. I think they're pretty similar around the world. But sometimes students actually find out that they enjoy staying at an extended stay, because the extended stay is kind of like a hybrid between a hotel and an apartment. In many ways, it kind of serves as a long-term hotel, and it's a little cheaper. It's not as expensive as staying nightly in a hotel. Hotel rates can be anywhere from $80 a night here plus taxes to anywhere from, well, in the hundreds. Whereas extended stay will charge less, and oftentimes if you stay longer, let's say you stay for a week, they'll give you a weekly rate. If you stay for a month, they may give you a monthly rate. And in addition to that, they're going to be furnished just like a hotel is. They'll also usually have a kitchenette, and they may have some laundry facilities on site. And sometimes in the past, students have actually appreciated and decided to stay in an extended stay as opposed to renting an apartment. And one of the reasons is there's no contract per se. You're not locked into a year lease or longer. Sometimes leases can be even 18 months. So if you do stay at an extended stay and you want to extend your extended stay, then that could be an option. Okay, we'll go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Now, so before you even decide or get here or even start looking, you want to have a brainstorming session on some things that you want to consider. And I think the first step is just knowing what you want and knowing what will be a good fit for you based on what's available. And don't underestimate the value of doing this brainstorming session, because while you're studying here at UTD, you're going to go through lots of academic and life changes and lots of culture shock. And we're going to be here to help you to transition through that. But I think it's important that you find a place that fits what you really want and what you really need, because this is going to be like a sanctuary for you. It's going to be your home away from home. Plus, there's so many unique things that we often associate with searching for an apartment that might be a requirement or something different that you might not be used to in your home country. And we've kind of listed these by topic. The first one would be location. And by the way, a lot of these will affect how much you're going to pay for the apartment, and location is definitely one of those. When it comes to location, the name UT Dallas can be a little bit misleading. Technically, we're not in Dallas, Texas. Technically, we're in Richardson. And Richardson is just a suburb of Dallas. It's one of the original suburbs, so it's very close to it. As a matter of fact, just a few, like maybe a kilometer in this direction, like west of campus, you're in Dallas again. And because we're so close to Dallas and we're one of the original suburbs, we're included in the Dallas's public transit system, which we'll talk a little bit more about. So when you do your search for housing through those rental sites, which my colleague Sona will talk about in a moment, you certainly would want to include Richardson in your search. Some other suburbs that are close to campus that you might include, like there's a part of Dallas called Far North Dallas. So that would be a good option to include in your search. Or there is another suburb called Plano. It's spelled Plano. It's just north of campus, not too far away. So in addition to Richardson, Plano, and Dallas, Far North Dallas, those are probably the areas that are going to be within a 3-mile or 5-kilometer radius of campus. So as I mentioned, Richardson's proximity to and UT Dallas's proximity to Dallas allows for public transportation. So when considering the location, we recommend you compare the location with a map of the bus or rail routes in the area. And one of the bus routes, or I guess one option for you, is the Comet Cruiser. The Comet Cruiser are some bus routes that link campus with other parts of the surrounding areas. And I think it's really a partnership between the university and the Dallas public transit system. And these are basically two main routes, east and west. And in the Q&A, if you're curious, we can show you kind of a map of them, but we will have a link to the map of them. They are free for everyone, not just UTD students, but for everyone to ride. And they all come to campus, and then they link with other bus routes as well as light rail. And they're called Comet Cruisers. Sometimes you'll hear them referred to as 883, which is the route number, 883 East, 883 West. In addition to that, we have the Dallas Area Rapid Transit. It's called DART. That's just the name of the transportation system here in the Dallas metropolitan area, specifically Dallas. It includes a series of bus routes, but it also includes a light rail system. And one of the light rail systems that comes close to campus, not quite here, is the Red Line. And that is an option to get downtown rather quickly if you want to go downtown, or and it kind of help you get to other parts of the city more quickly than a bus might. And then there's some options for renting if you get really close to campus where you don't even have to take a bus, you can just walk. So there are a lot of options for you when it comes to location. And we will have some links to the public transit maps, as well as a map of apartment communities within a 3-mile radius or a 5-kilometer radius, and that'll be offered during our Q&A. In addition to location, time is another thing you want to consider when you're searching for a place to live. As we mentioned, the process of viewing those apartments and completing the paperwork, signing the lease, a lot of those are going to start when you are here. But you can start searching and narrowing down your apartments and your apartment types that you're interested in while you're in your home country. So that way you might have like a big list, and then you kind of go through with these things to consider that you want and it helps you to narrow your list so that when you arrive, you're ready to go out to maybe 4 or 5 different places that you've known that you want to check out and look at. So doing this research beforehand is a vital step. It's crucial to having a successful apartment search or securing that apartment. The earlier you start looking, the better. So have a good idea. It'll help you to have a good idea of what's available. And one aspect of the timeline category has to do with just the availability of the apartment itself. In most cases, the specific apartment that you're going to be renting will not be available on the day that you visit. Instead, they might show you another unit, or they might show you what's called a model unit. So don't expect that particular apartment to be the one that you're going to be moving into. And that's why we encourage you to use some of those temporary housing options that we mentioned in the previous slide. The timeline sometimes can be when you make a decision that you want a particular apartment, and when it's going to be available and it's going to be actually ready, that timeline could be anywhere from a week to 2 weeks. That's on average. Sometimes it can be longer. So that's just something that you want to ask when you're searching for your apartment is, and a lot of times these apartments will have websites, and they'll have available, you can look at their floor plans on their websites, and they'll actually have exactly which unit numbers are going to be available on what date. So that also helps you a lot with the planning as well. So in addition to going and using these search sites for apartments, when you go to the actual search site, it's going to have a link to the apartment website itself. I recommend looking at that because that will give you a better understanding of the time frame of when things are available. But either way, you will need to have those temporary options available to you. So it's important to budget for those before getting into your more permanent housing. Another thing to consider is the size of the apartment. I think this is pretty standard everywhere. The larger the apartment, the more expensive it will be. And the way we categorize or measure apartment size here in the US is typically by the number of bedrooms, and then also the square footage. These are going to affect the price. Most apartment complexes here in the Dallas DFW Metroplex are going to be either 1, 2, or 3 bedroom apartments. And some of them might even be a studio or what's called an efficiency apartment. And these are just terms used to describe a 1-room apartment where the living room and the sleeping room are the same area. So you're going to have like a living/sleeping room, and then you might have a kitchen or a kitchenette, like a small kitchen, and then a bathroom, and that's it. So it's very small, suitable for one person only. But if you have a 1-bedroom apartment, you will have a living room and a bedroom. If you have a 2-bedroom apartment, you're still going to have that living room, 2 bedrooms, 3-bedroom, etc. Now, the studio or efficiency option might be a good choice for a student who does not like living with others. You want to be alone, you want to have that privacy, but you also want to be budget conscious because they're going to be, like I mentioned, they're going to be priced less. So you'll want to budget according to the size of your apartment, but another thing you'll want to factor in is the next topic on this things to consider, which is your roommates. And of course, the size and number of roommates are going to be 2 things that affect each other, right? So for instance, you might decide you want a larger apartment, but you may determine it's more budget friendly to have a roommate in that larger space with you. So one thing to point out about roommates is that they can save you money, but not just when paying the rent, but also the utilities and the internet, because you're splitting that 2 ways or maybe 3 ways or 4 ways, depending upon how many roommates you have. Now, putting costs aside, roommates can help you with that cultural transition as well. So for example, if you have a roommate from your home country, especially if they're arriving around the same time as you, They could add to the support system you need when it comes to navigating those phases of culture shock, and maybe if they've been here longer, they might be able to explain things that that might be new to you, that they've kind of a process that they've gone through, so kind of explain the culture through their eyes of having experienced it in the past. So that's a great thing. On the flip side, you could potentially room with a domestic student who could help in another way by being, a local guide. Maybe you end up being a roommate with somebody who grew up in DFW. They're going to be able to know all of the ins and outs, I guess, of navigating the city, as well as maybe explaining and kind of being a cultural ambassador. Either way, having a roommate can be a good, cost-effective, and culturally significant option. Just keep in mind, anyone living with you has to be on that lease or that rental contract that we'll discuss a little bit later. Also, there are some laws when it comes to the maximum number of people living in an apartment, and some rules and regulations. And they're often determined by the size and the number of bedrooms. And the apartment community, the apartment complex, the property manager will give you the exact number of people who are allowed to live in this specific apartment. I think the general rule is no more than 2 people per bedroom, but you need to ask the specific apartment complex the rules that they have. When it comes to searching for a roommate, and again, we'll include these links. The first one that we can think of would be the UTD Mobile App. There are some forums on there where you can communicate with other students or other incoming students to potentially find some roommates. In addition to that, reaching out to your cultural student organization. Many of them are based on nationality. Other students who come from the same, they're basically other students who come from the same culture or country as you. So even if they're not your roommates, and you don't end up selecting one of them as your roommate, they could be a great resource for recommending or finding the right place for you, because they might know you better, and also they're because they're experiencing this themselves and renting in these apartments themselves, they have I guess a better expertise to maybe recommend a particular place or two to you than certainly what we would. All right, next slide, please. Yes, we don't just have 4 things to consider, we've got a few more. The next one would be furniture. Unless stated otherwise, most apartments in the United States are not furnished. Obviously, hotels are furnished. Those extended stays we mentioned are going to be furnished. There are some cases where apartments will be furnished or partially furnished, but if so, it's going to say it in the ad. It's going to say furnished. But if it doesn't say that it is furnished, then it's not furnished. Now, one thing to note is that when you do tour, if there is a model unit, a model apartment, which this is just going to be one that's nobody lives in, it's going to be what's called staged, which means it's going to have the furniture, it's going to have pictures, decor, it's even going to have photos of people, and you're like, who are these people? We don't know. And clothing maybe hanging in the closet, and they want it to look comfortable, and they want you to picture yourself living in that space, and maybe get an idea of like how you can arrange the furniture. So that's why it's got all the furniture in it, but don't assume that just because the model has furniture that your apartment will. Now, furniture, when it comes to furniture, chances are you're going to need to get some if you're not staying at a hotel or a furnished apartment. There are furniture shops with budget-friendly options here in the Dallas area. A few of them that come to mind would be IKEA, Walmart, Target, and you can have you can arrange to have the furniture to be picked up or delivered. Some students also rent furniture. There are furniture rental companies, and sometimes apartment complexes will advertise for them. They might have a particular company that they partner with for anyone who rents from an apartment from them who needs to rent furniture. And so they do exist, but keep in mind, one, you'll want to ask your specific apartment community or manager, because they might only allow specific companies, but also they can be expensive. And in the long term, they will cost a lot more money than buying furniture or than buying used furniture. Now, they could be a good short-term option. So like if you arrive and you're like, well, I want to purchase a bed, but I just need one quickly, that might be a good short-term option for you. But make sure you read the contracts and like the time as far as how long you have to pay for it and keep it. So just if you have questions about that, you can reach out to the property manager or you can reach out to us too. Another good source for finding furniture, I mentioned used furniture, would be something like Facebook Marketplace. You can find affordable used options. It's relatively safe, but it's advisable to meet in public and most certainly to meet during daylight hours. The good thing about Facebook is that everyone's profile is attached to somebody who's real, and unlike something like Craigslist where you don't know. So if you were to purchase on Craigslist, I don't want to jump into the safety part too soon, but if you decide you want to purchase something on Craigslist, we advise you do not meet privately, always meet in a public place. But it's probably a good rule of thumb for meeting anyone to purchase furniture anyway, as far as used furniture from an individual. The next thing to consider would be amenities. And these are all of the benefits or extras that are in your apartment or apartment community. And when it comes to this, as far as things to consider, I mean, all the amenities would be great, right? But chances are all of the amenities would be a really swanky, very expensive place, and then maybe that's for you, maybe it's not. So when you think about amenities, you might want to consider what is something you need to have versus something that's just nice to have. So there are some options when it comes to doing, and I'll just go ahead and list some of these amenities that are common in the United States and here in Dallas. One would be washers and dryers. We have obviously washing machines just like everywhere else in the world. In the United States, we do have dryers, which is not very common outside of the US and Canada. So sometimes you will find an apartment that has a washer and dryer in the apartment, or it might just have a hookup. And a hookup just means you purchase your own and then you hook them up or have a professional hook them up, and there's a space for them in your apartment. Or there may be a laundry room where you do the laundry in the community. And it might be coin operated, or you might pay through an app, but it's going to charge you for it, right? So this is one of the things you want to ask yourself. Do I want an apartment that has a washer and dryer in the unit? Or do I want an apartment where do I want to save a little bit of money and get an apartment where I just go to the laundry room to do laundry? Another one would be gym or a fitness room. You might want to have your gym closer than being at your university, or you might say, hey, everything I need is included in tuition at the university, so I can work out on campus. I don't need to bother looking for an apartment with a fancy gym or fitness room. Same thing, does the apartment allow pets? Most of the time they do, but there's going to be a pet rent and a pet deposit, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Also, do you have a vehicle? Are you going to have a vehicle? Do you want to have covered parking? In Dallas, the weather is very tumultuous. It can be very pleasant and sweet one moment, and then the next moment there will be hail coming from the sky. So maybe you want to have covered parking, or just maybe some kind of shaded covered parking because we have some very hot summers. Do you want to live in a gated or fenced in apartment complex? And that's, we'll talk about that a little bit more with safety. Do you want to have a pool or a community room where you can host parties? Do you want to have valet trash service, or do you want to take out the trash on your own and throw it into the dumpster? So all of these and maybe some more will be considered or be part of that price. So that's why we say, think about what you really need versus what's just nice for you to have. And the next topic, or the last topic here on things to consider, would be safety. So another factor that affects the price, besides size, newness, amenities, would be the safety of the neighborhood. And this is kind of the same as location. It's part of location, right? So if you're in a location that's not very safe, you might have an apartment that's lower priced. so you might find something that's a good price, but it might be in a higher crime rate area. And just FYI, most of the neighborhoods in and around Richardson and UT Dallas, I don't want to scare anyone. Most of them are relatively safe, although you want to take precautions and make sure that you're when you're especially at night that you're not walking in a dark area, and we'll go over more safety during orientation. In the links, and speaking of safety and crime rates, in the links that we'll be giving you at the end, we will give you a link to the City of Richardson's Police Department crime statistics. And then I did mention them previously, a gated community, they will tend to be safer. And a gated community is obviously going to have some gates around the apartment complex. And then if you drive, you'll have a code and it'll open the gate and allow you to enter. But it keeps those who don't belong, I hate to use that word, it keeps those who don't live in the apartment complex out unless you allow your guests to enter. So they tend to be safer, but also there's a price increase from that. And then, of course, going along with safety, you should always keep your guard up to avoid scams. So a good rule of thumb when it comes to anything is if something sounds too good to be true, then it's probably too good to be true. It's probably a scam. Also, we recommend you do not pay your rent with cash. We want you to have a paper trail or documentation, and once you get moved in, you're likely going to have the option, or maybe even the requirement, to pay your rent online. But then by that time, you'll have some digital documentation with your bank account. So there will be sort of a virtual paper trail, but we want to make sure that you don't just be walking around with cash, like that, carrying that much cash with you is not a good recommendation. And then also, if you don't have a receipt for paying that cash, then that's probably, not a good idea. Never rent an apartment you haven't seen in person would be another piece of advice when it comes to avoiding scams. Make sure you see the unit that you're going to be staying in, and that's why one of the reasons why we say you won't be able to secure that apartment until after arriving, because we want you to be able to see that exact apartment. The UTD Police Department also has a recommendation for avoiding scams, both while looking for housing, but also just in general. And we will include that information onto our in our Q&A links that we'll be giving to you. So that concludes everything that you'll need to consider while you're searching for your apartment and in my section of the presentation. So I'm going to hand it over to the other program coordinator, Sona Hashim, to talk to you about where to start looking.
Okay, well, thank you, Carl. Hello, everyone. Again, thank you for joining our second info session today. And again, my name is Sona Hashim, the second program coordinator for the Office of Intercultural Programs. So now I will go ahead and go over some of the tips and suggestions that help you in finding your desired apartment here in Dallas. My first suggestion is to check UTD pre-arrival resources that we have on our webpage. This is a good resource where you can learn more about on and off campus housing options that we have. And Carl already talked about the housing, and but if you are looking for on-campus housing, just want to let you know that on-campus housing fills so quickly due to the capacity that we're having every semester, as Leticia mentioned. But however, I would highly encourage you to keep checking the on-campus housing if there are any like apartments available in case if there are any cancellations. But that does not mean you have to wait until the last minute to find a home. The earlier you start, which is the better that you have your apartment. in the meantime, you actually have another option which you can look up for off-campus housing. And we have a lot of options here, and that is close to UTD campus, which is within 3 miles. And of course, they're all accessible to public transportation and bike routes. So if you decide to rent off campus, there you will see on the webpage, you will see guidance that will help you with your off-campus search, in addition to a map of apartments within 3 miles of campus. Okay, so my second tip for you is to use apartment search sites. There are a lot of apartment search websites that allow you to search for the apartments you need. You basically can. I will mention the websites that you can use to search for the websites, but you can basically, after the search, you can just filter your results by the price that you're looking for, the number of bedrooms, like specific area. As Carl mentioned, that we are locating specifically in Richardson, but I would highly encourage you to search for apartments using the zip code 75080, and of course other criteria where you can filter your results. So some of the popular apartment websites we're using for rent, we have, of course, the very first one is apartments.com. Again, you can use that website, but also we do have some other alternative website, which is rent.com and Zillow. Zillow, we have a lot of landlords and apartment managers who use Zillow as well. So, but I would highly recommend to focus mainly on apartments.com and then do the search, and of course using the zip code. So the third option we have is, the third tip we have is to hire a realtor. So basically, a realtor is a real estate agent who can help you to find apartments that like meet your needs, your budget in general. Basically, the real estate agent can assist you with the rental process, such as, for example, let's say negotiating the lease, the price, whatever price you want, and of course, helping you with, like in signing the papers, or doing like the paperwork in general. So it might be helpful for you as an international student to hire a real estate agent to help you with the search. Of course, since you're not like really familiar with the area, and the realtors are more familiar about the city and the neighborhoods, and of course zip codes. And basically, all you need to do is, after you find the home, you can schedule appointments with the like with that real estate agent prior to your arrival. And of course, you gotta sit together, and then you gotta be discussing your needs. But there is one thing that I want you please to keep in mind. Some of the real estate agents will offer their services for free, while others do not require payment from you, but actually instead going to be paid through the apartment complex managers or landlords themselves. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, so now I will go ahead and talk about some of the costs that you will be in charge of in addition to your monthly rental payment. The first one we're going to be talking about is utilities. So basically, utilities are the basic services that in general are used in apartments. So we have such as water, gas, electricity. Some of the rental prices could include utilities. So that means you don't have to pay, for all these utilities because they're all included within your rental price. But some of the apartments do not include utilities in their rental price. So in this case, you will be in charge and responsible for paying all these utilities separately than your monthly rental price. So you have to make sure that you will be paying all utilities costs before you sign the lease. So if utilities again are not included, then you will be fully responsible for paying payments and utilities. So I would highly encourage you to check before you sign the lease if you are going to be responsible for these payments, utilities in general, or the apartment or the landlord. Okay, so next we will be talking about security deposits and application fees. So basically, again, this is your responsibility to pay the application fee and security deposit, which we're going to be talking about the difference between these two. So basically, the security deposit is a refundable deposit, and this is probably could be like equal to 1 month's rent. It just depends from apartment to another of how much they gotta charge you or what they're asking their deposit amount would be. So you have to double check about the deposit before you send the lease. Again, so the deposit basically they use it to cover the cost of any damages that might occur to the property at the end of the lease. Okay, so that's why they charge you at the beginning. And then if there are any damages happen to the property, they gotta take the deposit from you. If there are no damages, etc., then they gonna refund it to you. And as an international student, and because you don't have like a social security number or card with you yet, please be prepared to make an extra deposit in some apartment complexes. So just wanted to make you aware of that. Now, so we're going to be talking now about the application fee. So the application fee is something different than the deposit. Basically, application fee is a non-refundable fee, and that is charged to cover the cost of processing your rental application. So this is only for your processing the rental application in general. Okay, so next we will be talking about internet or cable if you would like to install to your property. So you will be also responsible for establishing like internet and cable services with an external vendor. And of course, you will be fully in charge of paying your monthly bill for the internet or that cable. So I would highly encourage you to ask the property manager or landlord about what services they use in their area. So, for example, let's say one of the vendors we're having is Cox, COX. So basically, Cox would work. They have like a good connections, etc. in one area in Richardson area, but in some other areas in Dallas, they have like poor connections or their network is not working very well. So I would highly encourage you about what internet services or vendors you have to use for your area where you're gonna rent your apartment. And finally, pet deposit or pet fee. This is only if you have a pet. Basically, the pet deposit is a refundable deposit, and that is charged to tenants in general. Again, with individuals who have or who own pets. So basically, it is used to cover the cost of any damages caused by pets. But please keep in mind that some apartments would allow only one pet, while other apartments would allow like probably more than pets. And some apartment would have some restrictions, like on the size of the pet that you have. So I would also highly encourage you to check with the apartment manager if you own a pet. If you have no pet, then you will not be charged for that. So again, I would highly encourage you to double check about pets. All right, so next slide, please. Okay, so now we will go over and talk about some of the documents that are really important and, in general in the process of renting an apartment for you as an international student. So basically, first of all, we do have a copy of your passport and visa. So this is basically a very important document that you need to take with you or to provide to the apartment. And it's basically used to verify your identity. And we have your I-20, which is a document that issued by the school, which is here in this case UTD, to prove that you are a full-time student and you are legally allowed to stay here in the United States. And also we have a social security card. So basically that is only if you have a social security card, you will need to use that, that social security to provide it to the property manager, so they can use to provide to verify identity. But in your case, as international students, you might don't have that card yet, so you don't need to worry about, because they will be asking some other documents as an alternative document. And they also gotta ask you for proof of credit history, a good credit history. So basically, credit history would consider as the background of you as a tenant. So basically, this helps the manager to know if you have a clear and a good credit history, such as you're making payments on time and you have no issues, like reported to your credit by previous landlords. So, for example, let's say if you have no credit issues, like your credit is very good, then the process of the application will run so smoothly and easily. But if you have some issues with your credit history, then they might be reject your application, or the process is going to be like a little bit harder by they're going to be probably requesting some other documents. But in your case, as an international student, of course, you have no credit history in US. This is basically your first time, so you don't have to worry about this point. And also, you're gonna be asked to provide US banking account. Again, this is basically to use, as a proof of your income. So please feel free to visit our webpage and look up for the post-arrival resources page, and to learn about how, like to obtain US banking account. And of course, feel free to do your own search. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out to us, and then from there we can direct you. So there is another point that I would like to talk about. You as an international student, you might be required to get a grantor or a cosigner that agrees to be responsible for the property that you plan to rent. And what we mean by grantor or a cosigner is the person who agrees to be legally responsible for the rent if you're unable to pay the rent in any case would happen. So that could be like a parent, family member, a friend, etc. So this is often required for international students in general who do not have a credit history here in the United States. So once you have a cosigner, they will need to complete and sign a grantor agreement. The agreement will state that that person who you just signed, they gotta be they gotta be like legal responsible for the rent if you're unable to make the payment. So they gotta pay it for you. So yeah, again, it is important to double check with the apartment's property manager, and to ask them about what kind of documents that they are requesting or asking for it. So you have like a smoothly application process. All right, next slide, please. Okay. So before signing your lease, there are a few steps or considerations that I want you to keep in mind. First of all, we are gonna be talking about the binding document, which also we call it like contract or lease. So you want to make sure that you receive the like a signed legal document, again, contract or the lease. And basically the lease is the legally like like a legally binding contract between you as a tenant and the landlord or the property manager. So I would highly encourage you like understand everything that you have in that lease, in that contract, before you sign it. Okay, and then make sure you receive a very like a signed contract. And also uh, I would and as Carl talked about, I would like encourage you to visit the apartment and meet the landlord before you send the list. That would be very helpful in person. But why is it like in person really important? And I highly recommend it because that will give you the opportunity first to meet the landlord and also to check the apartment from both inside and outside and to make sure that you're receiving the property in a good condition. So let's say if you're not in the US yet, you can request, for example, let's say like a Zoom tour or like a FaceTime tour that you can arrange with the landlord. Or let's say if you have like a friend or like a relative, parents, etc. So feel free to reach out to them and then make sure you can see the apartment from inside and outside. And also, must apartment require proof of renter's insurance prior or like at the time of signing the lease? So basically, the renter's insurance protects you from financial losses due to any circumstances would be, for example, let's say like fire would occur to the apartment, like theft or like some weather conditions, etc. So all these events gotta be covered under the renter's insurance. So it is important to have renter's insurance even if it's not required by the landlord. Some apartment would ask you to have it, some apartments probably would not. So feel free and I would highly encourage you to check for that. And also we have paying attention to the lease term or duration. So basically, the leasing term is the length of time that you will be, like renting the apartment. Most leases are, can go like for up for 6 months or probably like 1 year. So be sure to pay attention to the leasing term and any minimum lease requirements. Um, Please keep in mind if you decided to break that lease before its expiration, keep in mind that there will be like extra charge that you have to be paying. You will be responsible for paying that extra charge. Okay. And finally, even if your lease, let's say it's about to expire, you're still required to give your landlord an advance notice before you move out. That would be 30 days notice. The reason for that notice is to give the owner or the manager of the apartment to find like a new tenant, for example, or to schedule like an inspection for that property that you were occupying. Because during the inspection period, you will be informed if you will be getting like your security deposit back or there are probably like any damages or anything happened to the property. So that cause you of not getting the security deposit back. So uh, that is that. And I also would, you know, um, it also will give you like a time for you to make some repairs. Let's say if you have any damages, happen to the property, you will get a time to repair all these damages so you can leave the apartment in a good condition where you can get your deposit back. And again, just to mention that one more time, please make sure to give the 30 days notice if you decided to move to another apartment or to leave the apartment in general. And if you fail to do so, you will be paying extra fees. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so I guess that's all what I have on my end. Now it is the time to take your questions and to answer all of your questions. So I will go ahead and pass this on to my colleague Carl. Thank you.
Hello there. Thank you so much, Sona. All right. Well, we've opened up the Q&A, and so we're ready for your questions. In addition to that, I've made sure to, I just want to double check. Oh, sorry. I'm leaving you on the screen with me. You're welcome to stay if you want. In addition to that, I've already posted the important links that you can find right there. So yeah, we welcome your questions. As we transition to the Q&A, one of the things, there's something I wanted to mention real quick. This is an important thing. The information that we're giving you as far as kind of like contracts and terms and the standard protocols of everything, this is this is the general rule, but it's not exactly the same in all cases. So you want to make sure that you read every document, read your contract, your lease. So for instance, just to give you an example, the lease term, it can be 6 months, sometimes it can be 12 months, sometimes it can be 13 months, sometimes it can be a year and a half. Addition to that, Sona mentioned notice to vacate. The standard in the industry is giving a 30-day notice to vacate, and it'll say it in your lease. You need to give 30 days notice, otherwise you're violating your lease if you move out without giving that 30-day notice. But that's just because it's the standard doesn't necessarily mean it's like 100% accurate in all cases. So for my example, I made sure to read every word of my lease, and the lease where I'm renting, they require a 2 months notice to vacate. So I have to give notice 2 months before I move out, before my lease is up, if I want to move. Otherwise, they're going to lock me in for, at least another month or two. So that's important to even though we're giving you general information, to make sure that that you read the terms of the lease, and that there might be some changes, or what we're giving you is the standard. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get to some of the questions here. It looks like we've got one. Okay, yeah, the zip code that we have. There are a few other zip codes around in the area. So when you actually go and search, you can search by zip code. You can search by the name of the neighborhood. You can search by the name of the city. So we encourage you to do all of those things. Let's see here, and just verbally, we'll go ahead and mention it one more time. The zip code that UT Dallas is in is 75080. This is like the postal code. We call them zip codes here. Let's see, we have a question. We have 4 students planning to lease. Do we all need to sign the lease as co-leasers, or can one do and the rest is fine? If they're over 18, I think the law, but certainly the apartment community or the landlord is going to require anyone who's over the age of 18, a legal adult, to be on that lease, not just as an occupant, but as a co-signer on the lease, or like a cohabiter. That's usually the case, but you still want to ask that particular apartment community what their policy is, or what their rule is. Okay, let's see here. Let's see. Is the guarantor of your lease required to be a U.S. citizen? If not, are they required to be in the U.S.? I don't think that's necessarily the case. I haven't had a guarantor myself. Letitia, would you know the answer to that one in particular? Have any students, have they required them to have U.S. citizens? I don't think so.
In general, if they require one, it should be in the US, but as far as we know, not all the apartment complexes ask for one. So that could be a very good question when you're looking and searching for an apartment. Try to find out if they will be requiring that. In case you don't have one, it's better to ask in advance.
That's a good tip. And, this reminds me of something we haven't mentioned yet, which is when it comes to the apartment communities and the complexes around UT Dallas community, we have a large number of international students, thankfully, who go to university here, who study here, and these apartment communities know, I mean, for lack of a better word, they know where their money is coming from. They know that a lot of their business comes from international students. And so a lot of them I've noticed, and I've even talked to them while I was out looking for apartments myself. I even spoke with them and said, hey, do you have many international students from UTD living here? Yeah, we do. And I would ask them, how do you work with them? And we da 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 da. So they're willing to work with you. So I just want to mention that piece of information in case there's any doubt to being able to secure an apartment if you don't have that credit history or the rental history in the United States or a guarantor. There's going to be options to allow you to work, or for them to work with you. Even for me, I had lived overseas for many years and I haven't had a rental history in the United States recently. And because of that, there was a little bit of issue as far as I needed to pay more of a deposit, but they were able to work that out to pay it over a few months, my particular place. So they're very open to working with you. I'll just say that. Okay, let's see here. The next question, I found an apartment finder agent. Okay, and I found her on Facebook UTD groups, though she has official profile and a contact number. I'm not sure if she is legit or not. Is there a way I can verify this? Okay, I guess that one was already answered. Yeah, Sona mentioned looking up the company that she's working with to see, to kind of, what would you call it, to verify for them. And I'm kind of reading these aloud, you all, even though they're being answered on the chat, just so that the YouTube video can maybe get some questions answered that they might have. Okay, can we have a list of the various apartment complexes around UT Dallas? That is included on the chat, it's included on the links that we have. We have a list of apartment communities within a 3-mile radius of UT Dallas. And one of the things, I guess I can probably do that now. Let me try and do that. I wanted to talk a little bit about just kind of the layout of the land. Let me see here if I can do this real quick. Okay, I'm going to share this slide here with you all. This right here is a map of the Comet Cruiser. And if you look kind of in the center here where this dark gray area is, this is the campus, the university campus. And this Comet Cruiser is kind of, I mean, anybody can ride on it for free, but it's designed and it's done in partnership with the university. I mean, it has Comet. Our university nickname is part of the name of the bus route, right? There are 2 of them. There's basically an east and a west, and they have loops that one, the green loop is the east and the orange loop is the west. I think they have an extension as well. And a lot of these routes around these routes, you'll find some apartment complexes on here. And to just kind of give you an idea, just to generalize a little bit about it. Again, going back to things that you might want to consider, this west loop here, this area right here is called Far North Dallas. So it's technically not Richardson. It has a little bit different zip code, I believe. But this route has a lot of commercial operations. So you're going to find a Target, you're going to find some department stores, you're going to find a pet store, lots of banks, lots of places to eat, restaurants, fast food. There is a Walmart Supercenter up here at the extension. So you'll find a lot of commercial grocery stores. There's like 2 or 3 more different grocery stores here in this area as well. If you're the type of person who wants to be conveniently located close to supermarkets or places to shop, and you can just hop on that same bus from your apartment to get to these places, then this west side is a good option for you. As far as the east side is concerned, the east side is more residential. So if you like a little bit more green, a little more parks, there is a supermarket here, but it's just a little bit more residential and not as commercial as over here. But it connects with the light rail system. So this little line over here is where the train basically will I think it's like City Line Bush Station. So if you want to be close to that light rail system, and then also here, there's a lot of restaurants. There's a Whole Foods, so there's a supermarket in this area too. So this kind of gives you a little bit of an idea. There are some apartment complexes that are up and down this area here. There's apartment complexes that are up and down this area here. So those are the two general areas that are very close to campus where you can easily hop on that Comet Cruiser. And the frequency when classes are in session, most of the time it's like every 15 minutes. So those are good options. So I would kind of look at this particular map and then look at that list that we have, as well as the list, the map that we have, and kind of cross-reference them with one another to kind of get an idea of where you might be wanting to stay. Let's go ahead and look for some more questions here. Are there any platforms or websites where we can find roommates that share the same culture and nationality as ours? One of the things we mentioned during the presentation was the cultural student organizations. We do have the UTD Mobile App, but we also have cultural student organizations. And one of the links that's included is a link to the Student Organization Center, where you can search for your cultural student organization. But if you have trouble finding it, you can always email us, and we have a good relationship with the various cultural student organizations on campus, and we can connect you with them and give you their email address, as well as most of them have Instagram accounts, so you can reach out to them in either of those two ways. All right. Okay. We have there's a couple of questions about the okay. Okay, so we have one that says, can you recommend 3 communities or apartments which you hear from international students where they're staying, or your interaction with them each year? We don't want to recommend any particular apartment community, aside from the fact that it would be a conflict of interest. In addition to that, what I might find valuable or worth it for me is not going to be the same for you, and that's why we give you those things to consider. But if you reach out to UTD Mobile App or to your cultural student organization, they're going to have a lot more experience than any of us in living in these specific apartment communities, so they might be able to offer you some suggestions, or even potential roommates. A couple of Comet Cruiser questions that we have. Will the Comet Cruiser be free of cost for UTD students? Yes, it is free for everyone. And anyone can hop on the Comet Cruisers. It's free for anyone and everyone. Additionally, I mentioned DART, the Dallas Area Rapid Transit. Once you get onto campus within that first week or so, I believe you have the options. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Letitia. You'll have the ability to get a DART pass as a student that will be free of charge. So you'll be able to ride not just the Comet Cruiser, but you'll be able to ride all of the DART buses, as well as the DART rail system for free, so no charge to you. Let's see here. Does the Comet Cruiser transport run across or within the campus? Yes. Each of them, the east route and the west routes, will all kind of meet at campus. I think they call it the public transit center or something like that. It's basically the bus stop here on campus, where they pick up and drop off students, or me in some cases when I ride the Comet Cruiser. And it's close to the center of campus, basically where most of the classroom buildings are. It's not too far away from there. Is there a university bank at UT Dallas? Well, that question was already answered, so I'm gonna skip by that one because that's probably for a different session. Let's see here. How are private houses to rent in terms of security? Again, you're going to want to, I think that the private houses, you might want to talk to a realtor more about that, as well as just looking at the city of Richardson crime statistics. I think private houses may or may not be more or not more secure than any other type of like an apartment complex. And some of those links, and also one of the websites that Sona mentioned was Zillow. When you go through the search for Zillow, Zillow also allows you to search for purchasing houses too. But if you select rent, you're going to find a lot more individual or private homeowners, like where they just own one property, and there's some pros and cons to that. They may not have the same resources that an apartment complex has, but you might get like a little bit more friendly, like personal experience renting from a private landlord. So I would just say do your homework with the individual landlord and just kind of follow those rules. If something's too good to be true, then it probably is too good to be true. And the next one, let's see here. I found a room and share where other seniors are already living. Their lease already started, and now I'm one of the other replacements. So I want my name on the lease, but they don't want to send me the lease documents and don't allow my name on the lease document. What should I do? It sounds like they're probably maybe trying to sublet the apartment to you. Letitia, have you had an example or this situation that any students brought this to you? It's possible that sometimes um, if you lease an apartment but you're moving out and you're still on the lease or you're still renting the apartment, they may sublease it to you or sublet it to you. And this in itself is not illegal, but there may be some policies that usually there are policies with the apartment community that basically say in that lease you're not allowed to sublease it to someone else. So I would keep asking for it. I think it's important, not just from a legal standpoint, for you to be on the lease, as far as making sure you're doing what's responsible for you, and that the landlord knows you're there. But if there is something that happens, which hopefully it won't, but if there's some kind of like storm or the property is damaged, if you're not listed as a person on the lease, then your rental insurance. Well, obviously you'd have to be on the lease to have rental insurance, and you want to be able to insure your property. So I would say you need to be on the lease 100%. Okay. Is there a WhatsApp group where prospective students can connect and look for roommates from different cultures and countries? That's a possibility, although we do recommend using the UTD Mobile App. I think that's probably the best source, as well as reaching out to your cultural student organizations. Do the Comet Cruisers run at night as well? Yes, they do. Letitia, is it usually 11 p.m.? Is that right around 11 p.m. when the Comet Cruisers? It also, it depends on the time of the year, and the link that we have to our Comet Cruise. I'm sorry?
Yes, that you're correct. It's 11 in general. However, in certain type of weekends, holiday weekends, or certain time of the year, they may change. So there could be a difference between during the week as opposed to weekends. But everybody can find or consult that on the parking site, the website at UTD.
And that website, thank you, Letitia. That website is also mentioned in our links that we have. Let me see if there are more questions. Okay. If I'm unable to find an apartment near the campus and I feel that I need a vehicle for myself, can I drive in the US with my foreign driver's license, or I need to get an American driver's license first? We will be talking more about this after I think we have like an in-session, but I think Rodolfo answered this one. Let's see here. You'll be able to drive with your home country driver's license for a few weeks, but you'll need to transfer that over to a Texas driver's license. So when you do arrive here, I think within the first week, the same week around when we have orientation, and we'll talk more about it during orientation, there will be an optional presentation for how to get a Texas driver's license or a Texas state ID. So that'll be a session that you'll want to go to. Let's see, everyone. Did I get everything answered pertaining to housing? I think that's about it. We know that you might be running across more questions when you start your search. There's always unique situations, and maybe you know, that we may not have been able to cover, but we'll do our best to answer them. I myself am a renter here in the Dallas community, or in the Dallas Metroplex, and have been for some time. And I've also been a property manager in the past, many years ago. So this is kind of my wheelhouse. And when we get questions like that, additional questions, I'm happy to answer them, because I can kind of use some of the knowledge that I've acquired over the years. So if you encounter a situation, or just something that we weren't able to cover while we're here, be sure to reach out to us through email, and we'll do our best to answer that. And if we can't answer the question, we can try and refer you to a source where you can find the answer. Let's see, where can we find good apartments near UTD, as Northside and others are very costly? Northside is a popular apartment complex, I think, but we mentioned, one of the things we mentioned about cost, factoring into cost, was the location. From Northside, you can basically walk to campus. So there's a premium to the location, and I think that might be why. But there are options near UTD that are listed on our document that we have within the 3-mile radius. I was thinking kilometers, 5-kilometer radius, that you'll be able to find as far as apartments. And again, we don't have any specifics that we can recommend to you. Can I use, here's one. Can I use Michigan's driver's license? This isn't exactly housing. You can use the Michigan's driver's license. I'm originally from Oklahoma. When I moved here, I had an Oklahoma license, but similarly to had an international driver's license, or a driver's license from another country, Texas wants you to transfer over, and I think you have a certain number of days to do it, within just a few weeks. Yeah, when you get here, you'll want to look into transferring over your license and getting a Texas driver's license and joining us. All right, I think, well, maybe there was one more. Okay, what's the difference between apartment complex and apartment building? This is an apartment building. An apartment complex is basically an apartment community. So you might have this apartment complex that has several different buildings, and they're all kind of put together in the same space, the same land. And then within that apartment complex, you're going to have several buildings. That's basically the only difference. Now, sometimes you might find just an apartment building by itself that's not a part of a complex. Maybe it's an older historic building or historical building that this is just an apartment building, and it's not really a complex because it's just this one building that's next door to a house, or maybe next door to a duplex or something. So that's the only real difference. There aren't too many apartment buildings by themselves here in this part of Dallas Metroplex, but there's more apartment complexes. Okay, let's see here. Okay, I try to find out. Okay, a roommate and apartment near, but I can't find. If I can't find any room, then can I get a guest room at UT Dallas for living a week? I don't think there's guest housing anywhere at UT Dallas. I'm pretty sure there's not. So that's why we mentioned those temporary housing options, like an extended stay hotel, something like that. I know that there is housing out there, and we hope that the resource guide that we have on our website, that we've included the links on, will give you a little bit more options to look. And you might, because we're in June right now, and so it's probably a little bit too soon to kind of see what's available when you get here in August, as far as immediately. Not necessarily. They may, I would say it might be a little too soon for them to post that information on their website. But if you reach out to an apartment community and ask them, do you see anything coming available in June? or I'm sorry, in August. Going back to Sona and I were talking about putting that notice to vacate, you know, mine's going to be 2 months, but it's usually 1 month. And that means that today someone is putting in a 30-day notice to vacate, you know, the beginning of July. So sometimes the landlords and the apartment managers may not know what's available in August just yet because they haven't received those notices to vacate. One other question. Yes, this session is going to be on YouTube, so you can go back and watch it and maybe pick up something that you missed or refer it to some of your friends. Okay, are they both gated community apartment complex and apartment buildings? Usually usually the only community that would be gated would be an apartment complex. Just the individual building by itself is typically not going to be gated. Let's see here. We got this one answered. All right. So yeah, when we reach Dallas, will there be someone to help us out with the formalities and documentation required for the whole renting process and getting the lease? Rodolfo said that this is an individual process, and that's why we're providing these resources in advance. And again, one of the resources that we mentioned was if you really need that assistance, you could find a realtor. And I think Sona mentioned you can pay the realtor, but a lot of times companies like the private or the apartment complex companies themselves will be the ones paying the realtors to recommend places to them. So you may be able to find a realtor that's not going to cost you, at least out of your pocket. So that is definitely an option to kind of help you out with that. And again, I think reaching the biggest source, the biggest tool, I think would be getting on the UTD Mobile App, but also reaching out to your cultural student organization. So, you know, if you are coming from Iran, we have the Iranian, I think, student community, ISC. There's also the India Student Association, ISA. Reach out to them. They may connect you with other individuals if you're looking for roommates or have specific places to recommend to you, or also give you some resources and guide you. Because they probably, when they came here, they probably had someone from the organization assist them with the process. And so now they're paying it forward and they want to help out others. They want to help everyone to be successful. All right, I think that wraps it up with our questions. Again, as we previously mentioned, if you have any further questions, it doesn't end here. We will be more than happy to answer them. Just reach out to us on our email at icprograms@utdallas.edu. Again, that's icprograms@utdallas.edu. We do have our next virtual information session is coming up tomorrow. Let's see here, Wednesday, June 12th. So that's tomorrow at same time, 9 a.m. Central Time. And it is about paying your tuition and fees. So this is a very informative information session that you won't want to miss. And again, it will also, like this one, be posted to YouTube, our YouTube channel, which is also included in the links that we listed here within 48 business hours. So we thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope that you found this information useful or that you will going forward. And we're really grateful that you chose to visit us and come and be a part of our community here at UT Dallas. And we look forward to seeing you in person, and we hopefully will see you at some of the other virtual information sessions between now and then. So thank you so much, and we'll go ahead and say goodbye, and we'll be seeing you in the next one. Take care, y'all.